The Isermann family has been farming near Streator, Illinois since 1851. Traditionally a row crop operation, the Isermanns looked to beef cattle as an opportunity that might help them grow and diversify their family farm.
When Jim graduated and decided to come back to the operation, we knew we needed to add some additional enterprises in order to support another family. And we started in selling some seed, and then we also decided to do this cattle operation.
Part of our interest in bringing the livestock in was to increase that diversification, to be able to grow different things such as alfalfa and grasses, and to kind of change some of the land use of some ground we had. But the intention was to pursue a rotational grazing system to try to raise as many cattle as we could on small amount of acres so that we could be profitable.
The cattle enterprise started with just 6 pairs, but has grown to a cow-calf herd of 60 Angus-based females. As their cattle operation grew, they looked for solutions to better utilize row crop land to support the cow herd while also improving the land for farming.
Cover crops really weren't in the original plan. The original plan was going to be just, kind of grazing pastures in a more typical way and raising hay and going that route. But we pretty early on saw a potential there to be able to add that into the operation. Right off the bat, just simply grazing corn stalks was something that was plainly evident that you needed to take advantage of that. And so that's what drove our kind of initial fence building around a lot of our fields. And then figuring out how we can add in those different cover crops through aerial application or overseeding or different ways became important. And then we ultimately kind of settled in on this corn, soybean, wheat rotation where, wheat's one of those crops. A lot of guys around here say, yeah, it'd be great to raise it, but it's sometimes hard to pencil out. But if we can add those annual crops afterwards to be able to come out and graze, it really kind of makes it a much more profitable operation to have. Over the years we've grown. We've got about 100 acres now of permanent forage. It's in a rotational grazing system. And we have almost another 400 or so acres of crop ground that's got permanent fencing around it so that we can graze cover crops and crop residues as whatever the conditions allow.
Grazing annuals and crop residues has helped to make the Isermann's row crop operation more sustainable by allowing them to produce more from their existing farmland.
It's another source of forage that's on ground that's otherwise not being used. So you're getting you're shoehorning an extra crop in there off this ground. It's getting another use. And shoehorning that extra crop in there every 2 or 3 years, we think helps justify it. And we're not seeing any yield drag. In fact, we're seeing the opposite. We're seeing, I think our yields are better since on the ground where we've been able to add the livestock.
We now have a corn, soybean, wheat rotation where we can graze the cover crops following the wheat, as well as grazing something in the springtime ahead of soybeans. So we've kind of tried to work and figure out where that extra grazing can fit into the cash cropping system to take advantage of some additional forage. And I think that's helped a lot on the environmental side because it gives us a reason to put those cover crops out there. A lot of farmers are concerned about the value of the cover crop and actually doing that. But if we can tie in livestock into that, it makes it a pretty economical, feasible way to go.
For the Isermanns, utilizing cattle to graze cover crops has improved the economic viability of a practice that has important implications for soil health and the environment.
I think that's been the primary driver, not so much looking at it as how can we help the environment, but really how can we do both, finding those systems that put it all together and kind of change the overall operation to something that can be highly productive and efficient and yet environmentally friendly.
Everybody talks about sustainability. That's one of the buzzwords you hear, and there's 3 legs to that sustainability stool. One of them is the how it relates to society, whether society approves of you. The other is how environmentally friendly you are, but the other is, the most important one, is economic aspects. So people can love us because we've got cows grazing out on green grass and we're doing things sustainably that way and environmentally correctly, but we have to make money. So we're constantly doing this dance, and it's trying to balance all 3. I think from the consumer aspect, the sustainability part is going to become more and more important. So we're kind of doing what we think maybe is right is what we're trying to do. You have this feeling sometimes that you're doing something and it just feels right, and then you hope that it's economically viable.
Soil health, certainly it's important from an environmental standpoint, but it's also very important from a production standpoint. The ability to bring something like alfalfa to a farm, we've been able to see the long-term effects of taking a piece of ground out for maybe a couple years and putting it into alfalfa or grass, and the long-term effects that have has been very good for production. But it's, the hang-up is somehow kind of finding that economic justification to use it, which is what livestock kind of brings, both from the standpoint of having those living green roots all year round, having a very active biological system. Obviously, anytime we can bring animal manures back into the mix, that kind of improves soil health. There's a lot of different aspects to it, but that soil health part is a great way for farmers to really think about what it can do for them, not just what the environmental impact is.
Today, the 7th generation of the Isermann family is growing up on the farm in Streator, and it's certain they'll be passed not only a heritage for stewardship of the family farm, but also a strong understanding of what it will take for the operation to continue to be sustainable in the future.
We're producing a product that I think people really want, and we need to do it in a way that we can prove to them, we're not doing the damage to the environment people are saying we're doing. What consumers need to know is that we live on these farms. And so anything that we're doing, our children and our grandchildren and our families are exposed to it. So we're not out here doing things that we know are dangerous. I'm not going to say I wake up in the morning and say, oh my gosh, I've got to be environmentally sustainable. That's not always in the forefront, but I think it's in the back of our mind. And the fact that I've got grandchildren. And so you know that it's going to continue on and you want to do what's right. We did it because we think it works for our operation and we think it's right.
Congratulations to Isermann Farms, the 2017 Illinois Beef Association Environmental Steward of the Year.